Dog will hunt. Dog will hunt. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 was released in 1986 and returns director Tobe Hooper and stars Caroline Williams, Dennis Hopper, Bill Moseley, and Jim Siedow. And it follows the story of a radio host who is victimized by Leatherface and his cannibalistic family after a tape was played on air of a recent murder. Welcome back, guys, to my Texas Chainsaw Massacre film review series. If you have not counted yet, I have already done the first film's review, and I will have it posted down below. And I'm going to do every single one of them leading up to the new one, which will stream on Netflix on February 18th. So strap in. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 has always been the most comedic one of this franchise. It's always had more of a comedic tone. It's just became very campy, kind of like how Freddy and Chucky has been, so it's kind of become a trend. You know, this was in 1986, so Freddy by this time was already campy. So it was kind of following a trend there. It's just a bunch of black comedy, and they laid it on pretty thick. But before getting into all that, let's get into the positives of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. The overall tone of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 was a little better. Now, I'm not downing the original. I love that film. But the tone for TCM 2 was a little bit better, in my opinion. Film has problems, yes, but I really do feel like this film was a little bit of an upgrade. First of all, Carnage Candy. You know, I've spoke about this in the first film's review. That one was hard. There was hardly a drop of blood in it. But they decided to up the ante in this. Now keep in mind, there was like 14 years in between the original and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So that has a lot to do with it. They wanted to leave it up to the audience's imagination, mostly with the original. But in this one, it was a little more splatter-filled. It's not like you see somebody literally chainsawed in half. That comes later in this franchise. But still, you see a lot more in this than you do the original. There's some good kills, but more is definitely there. And the story was good. It just basically follows this woman who's this radio host, overnight host, who is persuaded by this former Texas Ranger to play this tape, which, you know, they record everything, like all the callers that come in. There's a scene that happened earlier in this film where this murder actually took place. These guys wouldn't hang up, so they just get butchered. And everything gets recorded on tape at this radio station. So it was all there on tape. So she gets persuaded by this former Texas Ranger to play it on air. And that's pretty much what starts the movie. It kind of reminded me of a mobster hit. Because what happens later is, of course, she gets a visit from Leatherface and his family. So it was kind of like a mob hit. It's like, no one should know. We should rub her out. That's pretty much what happens, technically. That obviously had deadly consequences.
Dog will hunt! Get that bitch, Leatherface! Get that bitch!
It was done very well. And speaking of the radio host, the character of Stretch, played by the lovely Caroline Williams, she was an awesome final girl. I really liked the way she played this part off. And she had a set of lungs on her, that's for sure. She was kind of like the Scream Queen of that year. I don't know if she was ever mentioned as the Scream Queen. Not like Jamie Lee Curtis. That's all I could say that I could hear of the most of being the Scream Queen was Jamie Lee Curtis. But Caroline Williams had a set of lungs on her. She could scream pretty good. But she made a really good final girl. And Leatherface, played by Bill Johnson, he was decent. I'm going to have to divide this up a little bit into the next segment. But Bill Johnson wasn't bad. He just wasn't no Gunnar Hansen. I don't know why Gunnar Hansen chose not to come back. Maybe it was a contractual dispute, or if he just wasn't asked. But they should have got him back. But again, Bill Johnson, he did a fair enough job for TCM2. Again, I'll mention more about him later in the next segment, because I do have some minor issues. As mentioned before, this one was the most comedic out of the franchise. So here goes into the mixed. The comedic tone was a little bit silly. I could get past it, because all the campiness and the way the characters played out, I could get past it. Mostly falls on Bill Moseley, who plays Chop Top, this ex-Vietnam soldier who apparently messed him up so bad that happened to him over there that he has a metal plate. But what he does is he has this hanger and he lights it on fire and he scratches it almost to the point where you don't see no skin. You just see the metal plate on this side of his head. He's a really sick individual. He actually takes chunks of it and eats it. Like, he's a cannibal. I mean, what do you expect? Most of the comedic tone comes from him. And this is the first movie I actually noticed him in. And then later on he started appearing in these other low-budget horror films. And then recently was Rob Zombie in most of his films. But yeah, most of the comedic tone for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 comes from Bill Moseley. And this is just one oddball.
You're my fave. Me and Bubba, my little brother, we listen to you every night. Music is my life.
Plus you have Jim Sadao, who adds on to that as well. Unlike the original, he's got more to do in this. And they actually name him in this. He's credited as the cook, but they actually say his name in this one, which is Drayton Sawyer. So when he shows up, does his little speech at the beginning when he's talking about his prime meat and getting his reward and everything. And then you see him going home, and then he finds out that that tape has been played, and you just see the craziness come out of him.
You've done it again! Ah, you cool shit! Ah, you buttcracker! You'll be the death of me yet!
But he has a lot more to do. Of course, he still lets you know that he's like the boss of that group, of that psychotic group. But he does give a lot more to do in this, unlike the original. I appreciate that. I really do. But again, a lot of the comedic tones does go a little overboard. But I digress. And the dialogue really didn't help its case either. And that's really what pushed the envelope for this comedic tone of the film. You hear Jim Siedow character in the background when the girl's trying to escape their hellhole, wherever it was. It looked like an amusement park or something like that. But when she was trying to escape, you hear Bill Moseley as Chop Top, you hear Jim Sadao as Drayton Sawyer talking about how the government screws us and this and that and just all sorts of random stuff. And not to mention that Bill Moseley is actually carrying around the corpse of the hitchhiker in the first one. I don't know if many people realize that, but that's actually the corpse of the hitchhiker from the original, who is actually named in this Nummins. And that was kind of interesting. If you look real closely at the corpse, you see that birthmark or whatever it was that was on his face in the original. So yeah, that was him. But it's just all sorts of crazy stuff that goes on, especially during the third act. Now that that's out of the way, let's move on to the negatives. Leatherface. Didn't really like the way they handled him. I mean, he was cool at first. Bill Johnson did the best he can. But he has this whole signature move where when he's cranking up the chainsaw and he's going after somebody, when he goes after Caroline Williams, he does like this.
Get the girl! Get the girl! Girl! Get the girl! Girl!
It's stupid. I really didn't get that. That really took me out of the film. Is that signature move. I didn't grasp that. It just looked stupid. Plus there's this whole thing where Leatherface kind of gets horny for the main girl. I don't know if love was involved as well, because this was the one girl that he didn't really kill off instantly. Yes, it does humanize him, but it really took me out of the film, and it just made him not as intimidating. And that just didn't do it for me. I'm sorry, but that just didn't do it for me. Sorry, but not sorry. I was just not the biggest fan of that, and just moving on. Lefty, played by the late Dennis Hopper. As much as I liked this actor in his time, as much as I liked his acting skills, I just didn't feel like that there was much use for this character. I mean, he's the guy that got Caroline Williams to play the tape as to start this whole entire movie for them coming after this girl. But I just don't feel like that there was much use for this character. I just didn't really get into him at all. They could have done something to where instead of him telling her to play that tape, she could have bumped it by accident. There could have been a malfunction, and she wouldn't have been able to stop it. And then the movie could have gone on from there. I just didn't feel like he was that useful. When he tried to save her at the end, when she fell into that hole before she fell into their lair, to the killer's lair, he grabbed a skeleton hand and tried to pull her up. Anybody with a shred of common sense would have known that that wouldn't have worked. It was a decayed hand. He could have just got some rope or anything. And then he just starts going and sawing down the entire place, not really making that much of a difference. Instead of just singing random songs. He didn't do anything for me. I'm sorry. He just didn't do anything for me.
Boys, boys, boys.
What the hell's going on here?
And then there was a point where Leatherface and him was fighting at the end, where he does get Leatherface good, but then somebody drops a grenade, and you don't really know for sure, but I guess him and Leatherface dies. I don't know. It's just crazy the way that played out. Plus, and I mentioned this in the original, and this might not be that big of a deal because 14 years has passed, but it did feel tiresome that there was another dinner scene where they tried to hit this girl over the head just like they did with Sally in the original. And it just kept on going on, and it was dragging on. And only in this time, instead of showing her wide bug eyes, they did a little less than this, but they kept on showing that old man and him licking like the blood off of that coat hanger or whatever. They just progressed more and more, and it just got so annoying. And I was like, please move the hell on.
Oh, great grandma in chainsaw heaven.
No, good.
Please don't hoodoo the boy.
But all in all, I still had a fun time. This is still a really good little horror movie. If you like the original, most likely you'll like this one. Despite all its faults, even more faults than the original had. In my opinion, it was still a good horror film. And like I said, if you like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you will like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre too. So if you're a fan of Leatherface and expect to see the same level of horror intenseness like the original, you might need to suppress your expectations. However, there are some moments to be had. Just be on the fence. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, have you seen it yet? What do you think of it? Was this your favorite Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie? Was this your favorite Leatherface portrayal? Or do you prefer Gunnar Hansen in the original or any of the others? Leave me your comment down below and give me your thoughts. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. Like, subscribe, comment, and share as always, the big four. And I will see you on the next one. Peace.